Good morning. We come to you today from Uptown. Welcome those that are here in person. Welcome those that are watching. Make sure that you click the subscribe button. And if you're on Facebook, share the class with others. The Mishnah tells us, Ba'asara ma'amares, with 10 words, 10 sayings, the world was created. Essentially what it means is that Hashem uttered 10 statements to cause the world to come into existence the way we know it. Now, obviously, he could have done it in one saying, in one statement. Why did he need to have 10 statements in order to make this happen? So the Mishnah tells us the reason why Hashem said it in 10 was lihipara min harashayim, to pay back, if you will, or to give punishment, to demand maximum payment from the wicked who are destroying the world that Hashem created in 10 utterances. Which means as follows. If Hashem created the world with one statement and people were ruining this world or misbehaving and causing destruction, you get punished in a way for destroying something that Hashem did with one statement. But if God spoke 10 statements and you're ruining that, the punishment is much greater. In addition, it's not just about punishing, but it's about rewarding. And Hashem wants to reward the tzaddikim who are causing the world to remain in existence. Now, it depends what Hashem did. If he spoke in one statement, so that all you're doing is maintaining a world which was created by one statement. But if it's a real valuable world, because Hashem used 10 statements, then the reward is much greater. So again, the reason why Hashem went through all these steps, says the Mishnah, is to make it more of a bigger deal when it comes, A, to punishing those that ruin this world, and B, to a greater extent, those that are being righteous and doing positive things in this world. Hashem gives them a greater reward. Everything exists for a purpose. And positive things, powerful things are tremendously helpful in our lives. But we have a principle that there's balance in the world. The reason why there's balance is in order to be able to have free choice. So anything which is good could also be used, unfortunately, for very negative. Let's take technology. Technology is a very powerful tool. You could do a lot of things. You could communicate. You could express lots of information. You could gain knowledge. You could do things in levels that you were not able to do in decades past, both in the depth and in the speed and in the price. But unfortunately, it also could be used in very negative ways. And lots of problems could come as a result of technology. So it's just an example where you see that there's a balance in the world in order to have free choice. On the one hand, things are extremely powerful and we have the ability and the access. And at the same time, it also could be destructive, ruining things and hinder people's success and well-being. But this is the idea. Hashem created the world with 10 utterances to give reward to those that need reward, to those that deserve reward, on a scale of 10, and those that need to be punished because they're ruining a world which was created with 10 sayings. On this idea of reward and punishment, or the ability to have that balance, that Hashem rewards for those that do good and punishes those that do bad, there's a beautiful story that happened with the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was the third Lubavitcher Rebbe. We discussed him many times. He is known for the saying, Trach gut wird sein gut. If you think positive, it'll be positive. As an attitude, as an approach. And this Tzemach Tzedek had a chassid, a follower, a disciple of his, who was very devout and dedicated and a great person. He had a daughter. His daughter got married, wonderful young man, and he decided he's going to offer this young man the ability to study Torah for the rest of his life. And he said, I will support you. He had the means. And he said, you're going to study Torah. I will pay for your needs, for your family's needs, place to live. You study Torah, grow in your scholarship. And everything was going great. But at some point, the son-in-law got some negative influences. He met with some friends. He started to experiment with several different things. And one decision led to another. And he was now going off the path of Torah and mitzvahs, going off the proper code of conduct, and he was making a lot of destructive mistakes and really was dropping the way of Jewish life. And this chassid was very concerned. So as a chassid, he ran to his Rebbe, comes to the Tzemach Tzedek in Lubavitch, small town in Russia, and he says, what should I do with my son-in-law? So he says, bring him here. Bring him here, yeah. Well, he said, okay, I'll try to convince him to come here. So he goes, and he tries to convince his son-in-law, come with me to the Tzemach Tzedek. Now the son-in-law was not just defiant, but he did a lot of things. In those days, it was considered to be very modern and progressive if you were able to get onto your own horse and ride it. Not that you hire someone that takes you around, but you have your own horse and you know how to do it. And for a Hasidic boy that's now on a horse, it was a statement that he has left this way of living and he's now into the bigger world. Again, there's nothing wrong with a horse. It's a beautiful thing. But in that particular time, in that particular community, that was a statement of, I left the ways, I am now riding horses on my own. And the father-in-law is convincing his son-in-law, come with me to the Rebbe. He said, fine, I'll come. But I'm coming with my horse. I want to make a statement to all the people that knew me that I am advanced, I'm modern, I made it. Come however you like, just come. So he gets on his horse and he comes strolling in, riding into the town of Lubavitch. And he gets a meeting with the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek tells him, I hear you're into horses. He says, yeah, I'm into horses and I have a real quick horse and it's great. He says, well, tell me, what's the difference between your horse, a good horse, and a not such a good horse? He says, well, my horse is very fast and therefore it's worth a lot of money because it goes great distances very quickly. He says, what takes time for a regular horse, the amount of time it takes for a regular horse to travel 5 miles, my horse could travel 20 miles in the same amount of time. It's 4 times as fast. He says, well, why is that a good thing? He says, what do you mean? You could cover great distances in short amounts of time. He says, that's true if you're going in the right direction. But, asks the Rebbe, what if the horse made a wrong turn? Now, if you have a slow horse and all you did was go 5 miles, okay, trace back and not so, the damage is not so great. But if you're a quick horse, if you're capable and you're strong and you could go 20 miles in the same amount of time and you made a wrong turn, you're really far gone, you're really lost. So this chassid got the point. And he understood that what the Rebbe is telling him is that if you're so capable and you're so gifted and so skilled and you're able to go off the beaten path so quickly, can you imagine if you'll turn around and do the right thing? How quickly you could reverse things? How quickly you could return? And that's indeed what happened. This chassid, he got the message and he decided to make some changes in his life. And it wasn't that, oh, I messed up, I'm too far gone. As quickly as he was able to make the wrong decisions, he was able to come back. And this is the idea that the Medrash tells us, Hashem spoke, the Mishnah tells us, Hashem spoke with 10 utterances. He created a world through 10 statements to give that balance, both for those that are doing the right thing, to be rewarded on a scale of maintaining a world which was created by 10 utterances, and to punish those that need to be punished. What's this idea of utterances of words? So the Baal Shem Tov explains that Hashem's words are constantly in existence. You see, when we have words or names in Hebrew, it's not just the name that's used to refer to something, but it's actually the content and the energy, the existence of that item. I'll give you an example. If we have the word dog, right? An animal, it's a dog, you call it a dog. What does dog mean? It's a term that's used to refer to a dog, to differentiate the dog from a cat. So you're going to use dog to refer to that object. Now, the concept is that in Hebrew, when Hashem speaks, he doesn't use names to refer to them. He uses names to create them. So in Hebrew, the word for dog is kelev. Kelev is made up of 3 words, 3 letters, chaf, lamed, and vez. These 3 letters are actually the energy, the life of that dog. It's not just a term. When Hashem said, let there be light, the words in Hebrew for light, they're actually the energy that brought light into existence. These words that Hashem said were not a one-time thing. He said, let there be light, and now we have light for the rest of existence. But he's constantly saying these words. these names and these utterances are constantly being said because Hashem is creating the world through speech. People don't realize this, and even some great philosophers have made the mistake. They assume that God's creation of the world is the same way that we created things, right? We created a world, we create things by taking items, supplies, tools, and we create stuff, right? You go to Home Depot, you buy a piece of wood, you buy a few more items, and you make a table. Now, after you finish this table, you could leave because the table's here. It's done. It's not going anywhere. Why? Because you used pre-existing materials. So those pre-existing materials existed before you got in touch with them. They exist now, and therefore you could go away. It doesn't need you to retain its existence. But Hashem, to create a world, He didn't go to Home Depot to buy supplies, right? He went and created it from nothing. He can't walk away from it because if he does, it'll cease to exist. Its whole existence is Hashem's words, Hashem's utterances. So therefore, Hashem uses these words and is constantly recreating it to make sure that it continues to exist. And it's a very powerful concept because it reminds us that Hashem's involvement with this world is not just one that happened a long time ago. He created it and He left. A good manager, a good builder, a good producer does his thing and then he could leave. And that's the mark of success, that you don't need to be there to maintain it. But the truth is that with Hashem, the mark of success and the greatness is that He's constantly recreating it because it's coming from nothing. And He's always involved in this world. And everything that happens has His participation in it. And nothing that happens could be against His will and so on. There are 10 generations, continues the Mishnah, from Adam until Noach. Adam was created, and then until Noah with the flood, we had 10 generations. Why does the Torah tell us these 10 generations? To tell you how patient Hashem is. That even though the people of the time were doing terrible things and behaving in really, really inappropriate ways, both between them and Hashem and between them and other people, just interpersonal, they were terrible. Hashem didn't do anything. He waited one generation, a second generation, 10 generations, His patience, held out until Noach. And that's when Hashem decided to bring the flood. After 10 generations, it was enough. Now, there are 10 generations from Noach to Avram. Why is that? To show you Hashem's patience. That He waited until Avram Avinu came along, and he received the reward for all those that didn't anger Hashem. Hashem waited for the right person, for the right situation, to receive that reward from Hashem. So 10 is a very significant number in Yiddishkeit. There are 10 levels of purity and 10 levels of impurity. We have a commentary on YouTube from Levi who says the greater the Kedusha, the greater the holiness, the bigger the clip of the unholiness. Yes. So when you have an opportunity with something, it could be used for positive and used for negative. But 10 is that balance because there's 10 levels of holiness, but in order to have a fair, balanced world, we're going to have 10 in impurity as well, which sounds like it's not fair, but it turns out to be very fair because balance, in order to have any type of reward or punishment or any system of justice, you have to have equal opportunity. And if somebody wants to do a good thing, Hashem will help him. And if you want to do a bad thing, Hashem will help you. He doesn't stop you from being able to do a bad thing. That's the only way you could be rewarded because you had the opportunity and you decided not to do it. Or you made the decision and to do the good thing. Okay. The first Gerer Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Alter, once saw a fellow who was not behaving the way a Jew should behave, doing terrible things. And he goes over to the Rebbe and he says, you should know this whole Shema that we say in the davening is not true. Why? Because it says there that if you do certain things, there are certain punishments. And you see, it didn't happen to me. So therefore, I don't believe in this stuff. So the Gerer Rebbe looks at him and he says, you should know that you said Shema. Obviously, you know what it says there. And look what kind of rewards you have in your life. You say that life is good for you. Could you imagine if you would do more good things? That's the concept, where Hashem is rewarding a person even for a little bit good that they've done. Because Hashem does, even though there's a balance, but with good things, he does more than with bad things. His positive side, his kindness, is always more giving and more there, even though there's balance, than it is with a negative thing. So the idea of the 10 generations is to show you this concept. What's another example of 10? There's 10 challenges that Avram Avinu got, and he withstood all of these challenges to show you Avram Avinu's love for Hashem. It was so great that even though things didn't seem like they were fair, even though things seemed like if Hashem wants me to behave a certain way, why is he making it difficult for me? He didn't question. He did what he was supposed to. He made the right choices. And it shows you 10 tests that he overcame, shows you his greatness and really his love, his chiba that he has for Hashem. Now, just a word on tests, challenges. We don't like tests. We don't want to be challenged because we run the risk of not passing that test, right? But at the same time, a test brings a person to a greater level. It strengthens them. It makes them more prone to overcoming difficulties. And when you overcome a test, yes, it's difficult, but it's an expression of your dedication and who you really are. Now, we have a prayer, a tefillah that we say in brachas, in the morning prayers, which, by the way, if anyone has questions here, feel free to ask. Anyone online, feel free to ask. The idea of, in the morning prayers, we say, please, al tivi'enu le'ledei nisayin, don't bring us to any challenges. We value the challenge. We understand the benefit for us in our lives, but we ask Hashem, please don't give us these challenges. David HaMelech once asked Hashem, why is it that in the davening we always say Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, we keep on mentioning our forefathers? Why is David not mentioned? Why shouldn't they mention me? So Hashem told David HaMelech, the reason why you're not being mentioned is because the ancestors went through many challenges, they were tested, and they overcame these tests. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So they're worthy of being mentioned and used, so to speak, for their merits. You didn't have those tests in your life. So David HaMelech said, test me. I will overcome those tests. I want to reach that level. And Hashem gave him a test. It was the test of Bathsheba, and unfortunately he wasn't able to overcome it, although there are many deeper explanations of what this really means. And David HaMelech was a tzaddik, and he didn't sin and so on. But the idea is that we don't want tests because you may not be able to overcome them. But Avram Avinu, the greatness that we see is how he was able to have that those tests. We know that Avram Avinu had tremendous kindness. He was very hospitable, and because of this hospitality that he had, he's very rewarded. There's once a couple by the name of Eliezer and Sarah, and this couple lived a very simple life, but they were very hospitable. And anyone that ever wanted could always find a place to eat and even to sleep at their house. Friday nights especially, there was always a lot of guests for the Shabbos meal and Shabbos afternoon. One Shabbos morning, there's a knock on the door, and a fellow walks in. And Eliezer is like, oh, welcome, come on in. But the other guests around the table looked at him and said, one second, if you're here, you traveled on Shabbos. You know how to travel on Shabbos. And they saw with his walking stick and based on the way he was dressed and the bag over his shoulder, he traveled. He wasn't here last night. We would have seen him. And they started to ridicule him. And Eliezer said, don't. Let's be nice to him. And he kept on honoring him and making him feel comfortable and giving him a place at the head of the table. And the other guests were making fun. Not only that, but this guest was difficult. He was making a mess. He was breaking stuff. He was rude. It wasn't a pleasant situation. But he was very, very nice. The host, Eliezer, was very nice to him, gave him everything he needed, treated him nicely, didn't judge him, the fact that he traveled on Shabbos, didn't judge the way he was behaving. He was just nice to him. When Shabbos was finally over and the guests left, this guest stayed behind. And he turns to Eliezer and he says, I want to tell you something. I am not just a guy. I'm Elijah the prophet. I'm a messenger from heaven. And they sent me to tell you that you are going to be rewarded with a child. This couple, Eliezer and Sarah, were childless for a long time. and they're already older. And he said, you're going to be rewarded with a child. Now there were other oppositions, if you will, in heaven who didn't want you to get that reward. And they sent me to test you. I was meant to come down here to this world, come to your house, and see, are you really hospitable? And I behaved in an inappropriate way on multiple levels. And you passed the test. So you're going to be rewarded with a child. He did have a child, this couple, Eliezer and Sarah. The child was named Yisrael, who later became the Baal Shem Tov. When he grew up, he founded the Hasidic movement. So here's a couple that was tested. They passed the test, and they received tremendous rewards. The tests are difficult. We don't want them. But when we go through them, we appreciate and recognize the value that it has and what it brings, and showing us the reward that we get from it by expressing our dedication to Hashem. Now, we have to appreciate miracles. The Mishnah continues and tells us there are 10 miracles that Hashem did for the Jewish people in Egypt, and 10 at sea. There are 10 plagues that Hashem brought to the Egyptians in Egypt, and 10 plagues he brought to the Egyptians at sea. 10 tests. Hashem challenged, our ancestors challenged Hashem in 10 different ways in the desert. As the Pasuk tells us, they tested me 10 times and didn't listen to my voice. But when the Mishnah tells us about miracles, it's an opportunity to recognize that we have to appreciate miracles. Every morning we wake up, we say, Maidani, I acknowledge Hashem, right? Thank you for giving me back my life, for restoring my soul. It's something which a person has to appreciate these miracles, express them, and thank Hashem. There's a story about a person who was paralyzed. His daughter was paralyzed. And it was very difficult. And his wife would always tell him, why don't you go and seek out counsel from the Baal Shem Tov? Ask the Baal Shem Tov to bless our daughter. They never wanted to. He always said, listen, I'm not a Hasidic man. I don't believe in Rebbes. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going. But she nudged and nudged and nudged. So finally he went to the Baal Shem Tov. He comes into the Baal Shem Tov and he says, Rebbe, my daughter who's in the wagon outside, she is paralyzed. Give me a blessing and make her healthy. She should be able to move again. And he took a bag of money and he placed it onto the table and said, and here's payment. Give her a blessing. I want her to walk. At that moment, this fellow looks out the window at his money and he sees out of the wagon, his daughter gets up and she's walking to lift all the coins that the Baal Shem Tov threw. So he looks around and he says, I'm getting out of this place. He runs outside, goes to the coachman and says, quick, get my daughter in the wagon and let's run, before they say that the Baal Shem Tov caused that miracle. Here's a person who saw an open miracle, Baal Shem Tov's blessing, which really healed his daughter, but he's refusing to appreciate and recognize that miracle comes from. And the Mishnah tells us there are 10 miracles that happened in the desert, in the Mitzrayim, and 10 at sea, to tell you the greatness. And we have to appreciate these miracles that happen. There's a lot more that we could say on number 10, a lot more to share. We're going to stop for now. And if you have any questions, comments, please, whether it's on the replay or live, I'm happy to answer them. And subscribe to the video, share the video. Have a wonderful day.